Hello, members. Welcome to another incredible edition of Heat Treat Live. Today, we're going to talk about where doing nothing will cost you everything in the future. And I'm excited. Todd Wenzel from Throughput Consulting and Pete Hushek, the current president of MTI, as well as the president of Heat Treat, Phoenix Heat Treat out of Phoenix. We just came from Pete's place for a plant tour for the YES program. But today, what I want you to know, everybody is posting on the right-hand side here where they're listening from. We're excited to see their teams of people listening in. As we go through this conversation, if you have a question you would like to get a perspective, either someone in the chat room or from Pete or Todd, take the moment to put your comments down there. I'll be monitoring those questions and comments, and then we will ask those to the panelists and get their perspective on that. So I really feel like this is one of the most important conversations that can be being had in this industry right now, because one thing's happening faster than ever before, and that's change. And there's three things that are doing it or driving it: demographic shifts, consumer buying habits, as well as emerging technologies. And the big thing about consumer demographic shifts that everybody on this line needs to know, which is why this conversation is so important, is in order for you to grow your business the next 10 years, we're going to grow at just 5%. That's 50% of the next 10 years. There is not enough employees. We have the shortest labor pool we've ever had in our history. And that is a 7 to 10 year problem. This is not going away. So if you go to bed at night saying, man, where are we going to find the people to grow our business? I'm looking at the camera. They're not anymore. You're going to have to go steal them from other companies or have to deal with what we're going to talk about today, which is actually growing your business through automation and technology advances. So I'm very excited today to have Pete Hushek and Todd here. And I'd like to give each of them a chance, about 30 seconds each, to just kind of share who they are and where they're coming from. So Todd, let's start with you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Todd Wenzel, Throughput Consulting, or Blue Streak, as you may know me. So I'm the president of Blue Streak and the architect of the application, and I've been working with heat treaters for a long time, very long time, and with MTI, and I appreciate being asked down here. Tom asking me to be part of this with all of you.
Well, you know, Todd, I can certainly remember that first day I came up. The blistering cold was Waukesha, Wisconsin, and it was at least 28 degrees. And for a Florida boy, that is cold, my friend. I remember the first month y'all were looking at building out Blue Streak. So it's exciting to have you here and see that this company has come through and done some great things for your company as well as MTI members around the globe. Pete is our great president that came in October of this year at our fall meeting of last year. And Pete, share people a little bit about you and maybe what your thoughts are as president in 30 seconds or so. Pete, can you hear me? Pete, are you there?
Well, yes, I am. I'm getting a little feedback from. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, very good.
So yeah, go ahead and share with people a little bit about 30 seconds, a little bit about Pete Hushek, Phoenix Heat Treat, and just kind of what your thoughts are as president to all the members out there. Are you hearing us, Pete?
Okay. Welcome everyone. It's exciting to be here, and I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Tom, I'm hearing but I hear everything back twice.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. All right. Not sure why you're hearing it back. Can you go ahead? Nobody can hear an echo from you.
Well,
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay.
But every I can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear an echo now?
Every bit is an echo.
Okay. Todd, do you hear an echo?
No, sounds good to me.
Okay. Let's do this. Pete, while you're trying to sift through, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the first question here and see if we can at least move into the discussion. So, Todd, we were talking about, as we got in, we were talking about the whole manufacturing first, heat treat second concept, where, I think sometimes heat treaters get bogged down in how do they try and do the heat treat process right, but they're forgetting to look at their manufacturing plant first, where they got to take product from shipping and move it to receiving possible while maintaining high quality at low cost. So what comes to your mind when you're looking at that process and things that people need to be looking to improve?
Yeah, really people generally think of the processing or the process of just the heat treating of the parts, whatever recipes you use for that. But really, I start to talk about that as a workflow. So getting the parts in the front door, in receiving, and getting them through the floor, through all the processing, all the inspections, all the shipping, and back to the customer. That's really a workflow of the parts. Or as you mentioned, sort of the manufacturing process that goes on. And what I see a lot, I think it's changing now, but what I see a lot is an overemphasis in getting a work order produced as quickly as possible. Get the parts out on the floor as quickly as possible so we can get them done. And that's what I ran into a lot in the beginning. It's changing. To let's slow it down. It's much more important to have all of the documentation we need and all of the specifications that are required in place and confirmed and matched up with the PO and all of that basic contract review before the parts get released out to the floor. And that's an important part. Slow down in order to speed up the whole process.
Right. Pete, are you online, Pete? Can you hear us yet? Looks like he's still having some issues. So when you look at customer demands and trying to minimize those costs.
I can, and I think we're getting rid of the feedback.
All right, so can you hear me now?
No, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear us?
I can hear you, but I still get that feedback. I'm rolling down Chrome to see whether that'll
okay, well, so you can hear me ask the question, correct?
Yeah, there's a delay of about 1 minute.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
I would, if it's easy enough, it would be good just to close down, Pete close down his session and come back in again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll close down.
Okay. All right, so there we go. Got him. There we go. All right, so let's get back into it with everybody.
How do we reboot it in?
We have got.
Restart the
computer.
Oh, that's the problem. There's he's got an audio feed going yet, in addition to even though the video's down.
All right, so I'm taking him off so that. All right, there we go. All right, so Todd, so I mean, what do you think is going on with like consumer demands? I mean, we're in this Amazon.com one-click buy element now, where everybody is just, I need it today. They call you up, they say, hey, I got a process that's going to be 16 hours, but yet they're still wanting that job tomorrow. So what is going on with the way we're seeing with consumer demands, and how do we keep quality high as well as minimizing the cost so that and profit?
Yeah, well, that's a tough nut. I think heat treaters have always been in the last stages of a product, coming from some prime. All of the delays that have occurred in the manufacturing process up to the point of heat treating, now they expect that all to be just kind of swept away, and we'll gain back all those days that we missed with the previous processing. So that's a tough one. I think getting the expectations in place and with your customer of, hey, it takes 16 hours. I can't give it to you tomorrow morning when you drop it off at 6 p.m. tonight. Managing those expectations and really kind of opening up the velocity in the shop so that if you do have these critical parts that have to come out quickly, that there's available bandwidth. to get them through. And then hopefully if you're doing that kind of a fast turnaround, you can charge a little bit more for it.
Right. So one of the things that you talk about a lot, and you see it a lot because you're so driven with y'all's technology, is quality and quality. So we always talk about what is the cost of quality, but I know you've got this thing that you talk about called the cost of poor quality. What do you mean by the cost of poor quality?
Well, a lot of people talk about the cost of quality, and are we investing enough in our quality, and and how is our investment in the quality relate to our peers in the industry? And what I've kind of realized is, and a lot of people much smarter in the quality realms than me have written and spoken about, is really quality. Quality is free. That's a free thing. It's really the lack of quality or the cost of the poor quality. Lack of quality is what costs money, not the quality itself.
Right.
So it's kind of looking at it from the other side, not how much are we spending for quality, but how much are we spending because of our poor quality. And everybody's probably tracking those types of metrics: rework, customer returns, that kind of stuff. And that's really the metric to look at, is how do we improve that part of it? How do we reduce the cost of our poor quality by making better parts the first time?
Right. Now, what are some of the areas of cost that you notice or see inside a heat treat plant where the poor quality is the biggest?
Yeah, that's you see stuff. Obviously, rework. I mean, that's a big one. So if you're reworking parts, not only has the initial processing that you've spent, the resources there, furnace time and labor time and costs there, fixed costs. Not only is that wasted, but now you have to go back and rework these parts and run them through some other process, which is using up more machine time in maybe the same furnace or other furnaces or other types of rework, and then coming back and then reprocessing it a second time. So that's a very expensive, not only just if you want to look at it from a cost standpoint, but just the resource, which is really, from my vantage point, is more important, is to look at, if you're trying to increase the velocity through your shop, every time you reuse a resource like that, you're wasting time on it that
Right.
you could have used to run good parts. So by getting it more right the first time through, and there's a whole series of things to do for that, then you've basically created more capacity in your shop,
Right.
without having to buy more furnaces or hire more people or pay for overtime. So it's that's a big part of the quality issues.
Right. Now, you're talking about planning ahead, and you, me, and Pete, when he was online, before everybody got on, we're talking a great deal about this. But what are some of the elements of big data and data analytics? Pete, when we were just there this past week, was talking about how he reviews every single project, and they talk as a team about that project before they ever get into it. The place they don't want to find out there's a problem is when it's coming out of the furnace. They want to actually have 100% of a checklist gone through before it ever goes into the actual process. So what are some of the things, when you look at big data, predicting manufacturing, predicting heat treating, and data analytics, what's some of the things that come to mind when you talk about those?
Well, yeah, Pete would be a great person to answer that part. I kind of roll that under the banner of contract review.
Right.
And that's part of what I was saying early on, is to slow it down, slow the work order down before it gets released to the floor. And so it's not important that the work order gets generated as quick as possible and the parts get out on the floor. It's more important to have the correct specifications and the quality characteristics set and the correct process assigned for the correct equipment and the correct personnel. And then if you're going to have different types of reviews like that, to have it all done before the parts are released. Yes, that's a huge thing. And I think companies are adopting that more and more.
Right.
Spend more time up front. It's kind of, I equate it to a metered ramp on a freeway. We've all have run into those, right? Very frustrating when you're standing there or sitting there in your car and you're 15th in line to get released onto the freeway. And I mean, they put those in place to make the whole flow, the velocity of the freeway, much better. So instead of dumping everybody in, they slow it down and meter.
Right.
So it's like metering your work orders into your shop is the exact same thing. Don't dump all this whip and process in, particularly if it's not has all the I's dotted and the T's crossed as far as processing requirements and quality.
So from a Florida boy, I hate those metered flows, by the way. I like to come on at 60 miles an hour and take myself in. So when you look at data and analytics, though, I mean, you're managing a lot of that from the program that y'all have for heat treating. What are some of the things is there any data or analytics that heat treaters could be looking at that can help them look at the future and look at their operations better?
Well, I suppose that gets getting a little bit into the Internet of Things or the industrial Internet of Things. Mm-hmm. From past jobs, one thing I will mention is I know a lot of heat treaters will have sort of the corporate knowledge either in somebody's head or in a drawer somewhere. For instance, when we run these particular parts from this customer, when they come in at this hardness, this AQ, this is what we heat treat them at. And this is the result we get out of it. A lot of that's stuck in people's heads and not put into a system that makes it available for everybody to see that. So that's a good thing to get all that corporate knowledge and put it into not just a spreadsheet or something, but something into a tool that's accessible by anybody who needs to access that whenever they need to access it. On the analytical side, on the IoT side, for instance, on the maintenance, being able to track whatever type of parameters you want. Maybe the current, maybe you've got some requirements for an operator, maybe per shift, to write down the amperage draw on this agitation motor. And you've got a clipboard hanging on the control panel, and somebody writes it down. And when they start their shift, here's the current amperage. Right. And when that sheet gets full, it gets taken off the clipboard and put in somebody's drawer somewhere. And that kind of information is ideal to be put into a device using Internet of Things, which is just sort of a new term, but it's really things talking to other things. And so it's a very simple, inexpensive device that can monitor 24/7, monitor the amperage on that motor, for instance, and log it to a database. And then not only does an operator not need to fill it in anymore, but you can actually do something based on that information. So you can start looking at that as, say you're running in like an SPC model in an automated fashion. You can see when that amperage is starting to trend out of control before you have a problem. So if all of a sudden your amperage drops, well, motors don't generally get more efficient over time. So there's something wrong there. Maybe the agitation fan is slipping or something, or the belt is slipping or something. Or on the converse, if it gets if the amperage goes up too much, maybe the bearings are wearing out. But you can catch these things before they cause a problem on the floor. Today, what generally happens is that all of a sudden it stops or you have a problem. And then perhaps the machine gets shut down, and now maintenance has to get in there, take a look at it, and it might not be till tomorrow, or it might not be till the weekend before that can be addressed.
So when you're looking at these types of technologies, is there a simple formula that people should be thinking through as to when is the right time to make these decisions? Because my contention is, if you wait till 2020 to begin to really start looking into these technologies that can help your systems flow without as many people. Automating today, in my opinion, is never about eliminating people. It's about maximizing people's capacity, because businesses are going to have a chance to grow here over the next 5 to 10 years at pretty good clips. So what is the simple formula people should be looking at to knowing like when, where, and how much?
Yeah, well, the first piece of that is just keeping your ears open and your eyes open, and really kind of old term, but pull your head out of the sand.
Right.
And just because that's how you've been operating or things have worked in the last 20 years doesn't mean that's how they're going to operate in the next even 5 years. So you gotta be aware of what's going on. Technology is happening. Additive manufacturing was something I know you're talking about a lot with heat treaters. Heads up, it's going to affect you.
Right.
So let's figure it out ahead of time. So you got to just be aware. Just
right.
be aware of what's going on, and then really I look at it from a very logical standpoint. That Ellie Goldratt, who's if people have heard of The Goal, he wrote the book The Goal, and his take on technology is that it's only beneficial when it diminishes a limitation. So first of all, you got to be aware of what's going on. Doesn't mean you have to understand everything. You don't need to know what blockchain means, okay? You're hearing that around. You just have to hear what's going on in the industry from your peers and other people. And then you have to be aware of the limitations that you currently have in your facility or in different processes. So only when you can utilize technology to diminish some existing limitation is it a good idea to go after it.
Right.
But you got to be aware that there is limitation. And like I said, just because that's how it's been, you did it in the past 10 or 20 or 30 years doesn't mean that's how it's going to work for you going forward. So once you know that there's a potential of a technology out there that's going to diminish some limitation you have, then you have to really say, okay, what policies and procedures do we have in place? Because we acknowledge we have some limitation, and we've put in place some patterns and policies or spreadsheets to address that limitation in some fashion. And then, so you have to find where those things are. So that, spreadsheets or other software systems that are disconnected, or some paperwork or forms that get filled out. And then once we use this new technology, then you really have to ask yourself, okay, how do we change now?
Right.
Because to just do the same thing with a new technology is not very beneficial.
Right.
Take a look at the cars that are out. I mean, if you just did the same thing with a car that you did 10 years ago with a new one you'd buy today, would you be utilizing all of the capabilities there?
Right.
Would you have your phone synced up? Would you have all your contacts there? Would you have navigation there? Would you have a Siri or some type of assistant that you can talk to,
right,
to read your text messages, play your music, all of this, as well as just look at the collision avoidance and all the systems that are in place to make you safer. So if you drove and used that car just like you did the one from 1980,
right,
you're not getting any benefit from it.
Right, for sure.
And then after you have that, it's like, okay, how are we going to change now? Because we no longer have these limitations that we had this obsoleted workaround for. We have to change our processes. And once you do that, then you say, okay, this is where we are. This is where we need to go. Now, how are we going to cause that change?
Right.
How are we going to move from that? Yes program has all sorts of great information about causing change in an organization.
So did you see the movie The Founder about the founder of McDonald's?
No, I didn't.
I think the way he started his company was he took they have a scene where they're on a tennis court, and he draws up in chalk on a tennis court a big square, and he draws where the fry stand's going to be, where the order stand's going to be, where the Coke machine stand's going to be, where the milkshake, where the hamburger is going to be flipped. And they simulated their order from beginning to end. He would erase the fry machine and say, we're going to move it over here. And they simulated the entire process to get the most efficient process that could get the hamburger, Coke, and fry from the machines to the customer without hitting very many people. And I think sometimes in manufacturing in general, not just heat treat, but we lose sight of that. And for me, I'd want to encourage everybody on here. That was a very telling scene to me, and they got excited when they got it right. And to look at your plant to see how do we move parts, not in the furnace, but how do we move parts from point A to point B with the least amount of people in the system and the least amount of effort using technology and stuff. And I think that's something that everybody needs. Would you agree with that? That is thinking about your process of moving it from A to Z, not heat treating it so much.
Oh yeah, definitely. All of that plays a factor in the velocity of those parts through your shop. Yeah, if handling the parts is a limitation, then you should be addressing that. I come from a lot of this stuff from a TOC or a theory of constraints standpoint,
right?
And that in a nutshell just says if you think about whatever the process is, whether it's getting the parts through your heat treating shop or building software or producing a part from manufacturer or additive manufacturing, if you think of that process as a chain and of interconnected links. And basically, that's how all these processes work. They're a sequential series of steps that parts flow through. And if you think about a chain as an analogy, and if you pull on the chain and use that, equate that to basically the speed of the velocity through your shop or the quality of your work, parts that happens. By definition, there's one weak link in that chain. One of them is going to break before the others breaks. And so there is one, there's always a constraint. There's always a weakest link somewhere in a process, whether you're talking about physically moving parts through the shop or doing some type of heat treating process to it. And to spend money and time and resources basically improving a link that is not the weakest doesn't make the whole chain stronger.
Right.
It just makes that one weak, that link stronger, which wasn't the problem. So if you can identify where is that constraint, where is the weakest link, and you put your resources there to solve that, make that stronger, you're going to see big gains in the entire chain. It'll be much stronger. And then what will generally happen is that the weakest link shifts somewhere else. Some other link is going to break, and so you focus your attention there. So if you've got a problem, if you know, and most people have a pretty good idea where the constraints are in their shop, and if one of them definitely is movement of material around, then that's a good spot to put some resources in to solve that.
Right. I think all too often in any manufacturing plant or any business, when we look on taking a new project or a new way of doing things, the first thing we think of is, okay, that's going to take more manual labor, as opposed to thinking to yourself, how could we add that into this plant operations, whether new business or new project, and do it with technology pushing the envelope and only hire people when you need to? I think it's a little bit, wouldn't you say that's a different train of thought? How you go about it?
Yeah, and everyone's going to be forced into that whether they want to think about it or not. Because as you mentioned, there are hard trends going on. And one of them is not only technology that we're talking about now, but demographics, as you mentioned.
Right.
And the pool of qualified people and millennials coming through. And where this gap is. I mean, it's going to be to the point where if you want to grow your business, you're going to run out of resource as far as labor goes. And that's going to force all these companies to automate more and more and more. I mean, we've all heard I think it was McDonald's or some other fast food chain, or maybe multiples of them, are putting in place kiosks and robotic lines in the stores. And that's because they can't, even at that resource level of labor, they can't find people, or people don't show up to work. So they're getting replaced. And unfortunately, that's what's going to happen. It's going to have to happen everywhere, because in manufacturing, as things get more and more complicated, the quality levels have to raise and raise and raise and raise. It's going to be a point pretty quick here where it's going to be very difficult, if it's not already very difficult, to find people.
Right. Well, you mentioned the Internet of Things earlier, and we touched on that a little bit. And I heard a great presentation not too long ago that the guy talked about, when you look at the Internet of Things, everybody wants to think that is just the Internet is technology. It's moving through the Internet, and it's not. It's really 5 components. It's people, process, technology, data, and procedure. And so, equipment. And so he encouraged everybody in the room to go back to your office, your plants, and do the same thing that the McDonald's founder did. Take those 5 components: equipment, technology, data, process, and people, and get with your teams and ask yourself, are all of them interconnected and being used in an efficient way to get product from the beginning of the plant to the end of the plant in the least amount of space? So, I mean, I know Internet of Things is a big thing on your plot. Could you elaborate on kind of what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's going to become more and more of a big deal. As I mentioned before, just sensors, just for that alone. Being able to automate data collection. The next problem you're going to have is you've got all this data. You're going to be swimming in data, but you don't have any information from that. And so the next thing is the analytics, is how do you take that and do something meaningful and give you some actionable information, not just a bunch of data.
Right.
One thing I like to mention about the Internet of Things is that I think for a lot of people, a lot of people I work with obviously have heard that term. There's probably a lot of people outside of our industry that really haven't heard that term, but it's really not that obscure, and people use it every day and they may not even know about it. Examples are, do you have a security system at home? You've got a cell phone, right? And people talk to it and their Google Assistant or Siri, and that's an Internet of Things thing happening. Or you've got Alexa that you're talking to. Alexa, can you raise the temperature up in my house? Set it to 72, and all of that is IoT examples, security cameras, all of that stuff, and actually, the whole computing power, the Moore's Law thing. If you haven't heard that, the Moore's Law was started back in about 1970-ish, 70s. That computing power, and that time he was talking about transistors. That transistors will double in every 2 years, and the cost of related chips will go down, cut in half. But now that's been more simplified to computing power, and it's true. It doubles every 2 years, computing power, if not sooner.
Right.
So the Moore's Law, there is a lot of technology going on. And if you've got an Alexa or one of those devices, Google Home or something, that you talk to, maybe to your thermostat or to your stereo, or to your whatever MP3 players you have, that stuff is incredibly sophisticated. And the sophistication is not in this device, or it's not in your $39 Alexa that you've got sitting, in your house.
Right.
That is not making all of that stuff happen. You're actually tapping into supercomputers when that happens.
Right.
So all that is a mechanism to pass some audio to a superconductor or supercomputers that are just vastly bigger than we can even imagine.
Right.
And that's where all the artificial intelligence is happening.
Right.
And then it simply sends the code back to set your thermostat to 72. Amazing stuff going on in IoT.
Well, let's see if Pete, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Are you there clear?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Wow, we hear you bright.
Awesome.
Everybody say welcome, Pete, anonymously. Just kind of wave your hands at the screen. He's in.
Wow.
So Pete,
Sorry
we have talked about a bunch of stuff since you've been gone. So now we're going to get your perspective. Todd's been carrying the load, and nice job, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
Only once did he look in and say, I think Pete would be better apt to answer that question. So that's the beauty of live internet and live TV. You go with it. So Pete, so you're an owner of a heat treat company. So real quick, give everybody a sense who Pete Hushek is. You're the president of MTI, president of Phoenix Heat Treat. Give your 30-second spiel.
Well, first of all, I'm a heat treater. Before anything else, before I had an opportunity to be in an office, I was a heat treater working the floor, and I've seen the floor change over the years from one guy watching 3 or 4 furnaces to one guy watching a dozen furnaces. And now the technology is getting to the point where more things are automated and the processing is automated, but now we've got to deal with the connectivity of people to the furnaces, the furnaces to the people, and more than anything else, people to people, because you can automate a recipe and that'll run your process, but that doesn't get the cert made, doesn't get the connection made between departments, and there's just so much more that goes into a job now from start to finish than just putting it in an oven. We have to move beyond just automating equipment. We need to automate the things that make people more efficient so that we can justify all this technology.
So Pete, every year we come to your plant for Yes, what everybody is amazed at is your obsession and constant movement forward with, we have got to figure out how to do things with less people, moving things, connecting them as you saw it. And you showed us a little device that you're using to develop Wi-Fi and connect all your parts so everyone knows where your parts are in the plant. Can you kind of elaborate on your mindset of why we got to keep moving forward with implementing technology, and then tell everybody a little bit if you would, about what your Wi-Fi stuff's doing?
Well, I mean, I come to technology as it being a tool. It's a tool of the mind of someone who wants to accomplish a task. And so whether the task is doing something or being told that the thing that you want to do is done, those are tasks that I look to technology and sensors to be able to give us that input, so that someone doesn't have to go running to look to see whether the furnace quenched. They don't have to go run around looking to find out where the parts are at, or whether the guy in shipping knows that order has to go out today. It's not an option. If we committed to it happening, whether it's receiving a job in, inspecting a job, or shipping a job, we need to know that it's done and that we can confirm that it's done. So I came to it the same way with this tracking system. We asked the people who are involved in customer service how much time is spent every day trying to track down a job. And when you look at the fact that you cannot depreciate labor, but you can depreciate capital and capital equipment and software, I look to find a solution for that. And a programmer that we worked with is reconfiguring existing technology to make an active Wi-Fi system that it appears will be somewhere between $6 and $8 a job packet. So if that job packet is anywhere within our scope of the Wi-Fi, it literally goes to sleep and wakes up every 10 minutes and tells us where it's at. That, in combination with our operating system, tells us how far along the path it is. So instead of having to go look for something, we're going to be able to see where it's at. But that's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is that we all know that we have jobs that get pigeonholed for one reason or another. But we're pushed on to the very next thing. And the next thing is going to be another customer asking us where the job is and when are they going to get it. So we need to be able to actually analyze that data at a later point and find out, why did that job get pigeonholed? What was it that prevented an operator or an inspector from performing the function in a timely process or a timely manner? And those are the things that will allow us to prevent the roadblocks down the road. The data is fine. You got to do something with the data. And once you find out where those roadblocks are and eliminate them, you'll find that the employees like to get rid of frustration, and they'll be more productive doing what they do when they don't run into the frustrating things that happen, whether it be lack of information, lack of tooling, lack of direction, lack of priorities. Whenever we run into a problem, it is related to something in the plant, usually people not getting resources. So we need to be able to see where things are at. That's why we're developing this system, so that we'll be able to give our customers up-to-date, timely information, but more so to find out what caused us to lose a day. And sometimes it's even worse than that. It's that you lose 2 or 3 days because 2 people didn't know the right person to ask, or might even be right next to them and they just don't know how to communicate very well. We've got the most advanced communication systems that mankind has ever seen, and yet we can have people right next to each other in the plant not able to communicate.
Right.
And that's a shame, but it's as part of running an operation, we've got to figure out how to make that happen. And we go by where the problems are at. The problems are there. What gets rid of the frustration? What gets rid of the problem? See if we can apply technology and try to make it work.
Right. So, Pete, you're an owner. I had Todd speak and talk about the issue of why he feels why people tend to resist changing into technology. From an owner standpoint, I know a lot of people, they're just going to wait till the system they work in is broke before they actually fix it. But could you speak to the moment of why you need to be ahead of the technology and actually investing today and not wait till you start getting behind the 8 ball? It's okay if you do, but I think we want people to understand an informed decision of doing that, and how fast we're moving forward with technology. It could actually put you behind the 8 ball, and it almost could be too. Why should they jump in and really seek to invest as soon as they can?
Well, there's a real answer, and that answer is that if you're constantly asking yourself questions as to why can't things be better, you're going to come up with answers. And if you're going to wait for someone to give you the perfect package, it's not going to happen, because the questions I ask ourselves and our people are going to be different than almost everybody else. So no one's going to give you this perfect package dropping out of the sky. You've got to realize that you're spending time and money every day with labor. And my most frustrating thing is getting our people to work together. And computers don't have personalities. So if you can get computers linked up to work, you've got a better chance than getting 2 people who may not like the same sports team, music, whatever, to communicate. And so I'm looking at technology application and investment based on the fact that I got to get something out of it. I don't get much out of labor that is just running around, and I don't like wasted labor. So I look at application of money to technology as a way to get something out of all the things that we've done in the past that didn't work. And you just have to push that envelope yourself, because otherwise you're going to be in a situation where your customers cannot handle the fact that you're not as responsive and giving them what they need. And like I said, labor's let me down. Technology doesn't once I get it going.
Yeah, a lot of people haven't put a lot of emphasis on it, but Amazon has changed the way people, even in business, look at buying. They want it fast. And Facebook is changing what people feel like should be private. We're becoming more transparent. So the more you try and not give your customer fast service or not be transparent with them about where their job is, I think it puts you as a disadvantage. Would you say that to be true?
It's absolutely true. They're not only wanting to see what's going on and when they're going to get their job back, but they also realize that if you're just rushing the job through, that you're actually increasing the risk that it won't be exactly the way it was the last time they got it. So managing risks is trying to make sure that things that we're doing are as uniform as possible all the time. And there's only one way to do that, and that's take out the guesswork. The guesswork that happens when a human being thinks, I'll try to remember exactly what needs to be done.
Right.
And you can't do that.
Yeah,
So,
Tom,
go ahead, Todd.
jump in there. That's a prime point that I've been bringing up to companies for 11 years, and it's really that partnership with your customer, that transparency, and through what I find is there are still a lot of companies that operate under this notion of scarcity, where the more information they keep to themselves and only release what the customer demands, that they've got more control at that point. They've got control over the customer. And what I try to preach is operated under the principle of abundance. The more information you give to your customer, the more locked in they're going to be to you. And that is, and through a customer portal, you can do that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so I always say the best way to go is to be transparent with it. Yes, your company's not perfect. No company is. But if you allow your customer to see where their parts are and what's going on, you get a different relationship. So instead of them calling you every day or twice a day saying, where are my parts, where are my parts, where are my parts, they can look and say, oh, I see you're running this part A instead of ahead of B. You know what? Our customer called. Now it's super hot. B is hot. Would you mind you running B instead? You can hold up on A. It's a much different conversation. It's a collaboration going on, and opening up and showing your underbelly is
Right.
the way to do it. Give them the data. It's their data. It's their parts. That's the way to go, move into the future.
Well, when you look at calling any insurance company or your American Express card or Delta Sky Miles, and you ask them for information, for the first 5 minutes, you're punching in information or saying 1, 2, big belly for your password, whatever it is. But you're talking to a computer, and in 5 minutes, you leave the conversation, and you never talk to a human being. Now, a lot of people look at that and say, boy, that's really sad. But in a day and age, what if you could take your 3 customer service people and take them off the phones and put them in another area where they're really good at, that could help you grow your company? And I go back to, that is what I think artificial intelligence, automation, and these areas are helping heat treaters do, is instead of eliminating people, you're expanding your capacity to bring in more revenue, more projects, and get things out faster, because you're partnering machines and technology and process all together with people to make that happen.
I agree 100%. And there's a part of that is somewhat scary for people, because they don't want to let go of some of this information that Todd mentioned.
Right.
Okay. But when I look at a customer, I either see a customer that likes working with us and understands that we're trying to add value, and if they're the ones that are just working with us to the point that they only get what they need, and maybe they're going to take it to that information to our competitor and steal that business. Well, to tell you the truth, that's not a customer I want.
Right.
I want to have customers that have that relationship with us, and we can help them grow. We're constantly bringing up things that improves our customers' profitability. That's how we sell our business. And when I sense that someone's not willing to do that, I'm telling you, I'm moving away from them as being a customer at all.
Right.
Because it's not worth that relationship where it's adversarial. And maybe that's going to limit us with the amount of customers that we have in the short term, but I think that in the long term, it opens us up to more and better customers who understand that we're there to help them out, not just to give them an invoice and move this part through a process that they really don't give a damn about. They need to care about what we do, and we care about what they do. And technology allows us to do that. And if it allows us to work with our people internally more and better, then we're going to be able to give them a better product. And that product can involve quality, it can involve risk reduction, it can involve speed of processing. It can involve all of those things, but it's really having all those tools help us help our people work together better.
Right. So the last question I want to ask both of you to kind of bring, I think this is the most important question, because if you leave a conversation like this and do nothing, you just really kind of wasted 50 minutes of your time. And there's been a lot of great discussion here, but until you implement something or make change, it really does nothing good for you. So I'd like to ask both of you to comment, and we'll go to Todd, you first. When you're looking at walking away from here, and everybody listening goes in on Monday morning of next week after they've thought about what they've heard, and they've got a checklist of 5 things in front of them that says, guys, we need to make change. I learned last week we need to make it. Here's the 5 things we're going to start in the next 30 days looking at changing. Todd, what's on that checklist looking at how people can begin to assimilate those changes in a way that makes their technology strategy better?
Yeah, the first is just be aware. If you're not aware of technology changes that are going on, you can't address them at all. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely the first thing. And then to be truly look honestly at your organization and find out where are the limitations that we currently have that are keeping us back from whatever goal we have, whatever that is. Hopefully that's making more money
right
now and in the future, and having good quality relationships with customers, and whatever those, serious, honest discussions. And Pete mentioned that internally, find out where the problems are and address those so they don't happen again. That's communication.
Right.
That's about 90% of everything.
Right.
It's communications.
So Pete, when you sit down with your team, what's kind of on your checklist when you're looking at how are we going to make change in this area where we're going to use technology and data?
Well, we go from that very simple question: what prevents you from meeting the customer expectations in a better way on every single order? So that question goes from the people in receiving, to the people that plan the order, to the people who schedule the order, to the people who do the processing themselves, do the inspection, do the documents, and create the package that goes out with the job. And that package that we manufacture is the cert. And if you want to call it the cert and the invoice, it's all got a lot of information. And if we don't use technology to either flow the information in or make it easier for us to process it, we're losing. And
right.
Labor's our biggest component. We have to address how people can be efficiently doing their tasks. And if we don't ask what's frustrating you about your job, then we're not going to get the answer. But when we do get an honest answer, we add all those up and take the ones that were chewing up the most labor and the most inefficient use of time, and we address those first. It might be asking a question of the furnace, how it's acting, but it could also be asking what frustrates you about your job and what can we do to make it easier. And a lot of it is this communication and information sharing, and thinking of the equipment that we have as appendages to everyone who's here, whether it be an operator, a mechanic, an inspector, a customer service person. The equipment with technology has to be an extension of us as human beings trying to do the job.
Right.
And if you look at that, you're going to find those questions within your plant. Just start to address them, biggest fish first.
Right. Well, I'm because I know, Pete, you're involved with BJ Bernard from Service Combustion Yard doing a session at the April spring meeting to really get people to be thinking about this. And at that spring meeting, if you're there, you're going to get a copy of a really good checklist of how you can go through and analyze your company on the Internet of Things and all the different aspects, and really begin to make those shifts and changes. So we're very excited about that process. And before we wrap up, Pete, you didn't get a chance before we started with the technology issues, but I mean, what would you say to everybody on the call as president of MTI going into the spring meeting? Just the things that MTI are doing.
Well, we talk about technology being a tool and helping us address problems that we have within our companies, whether we're associate members or commercial processing members or captive members. The tool that I think people need to continue to think of in an active way is the MTI itself. The membership is a tool that, if it's accessed, you're going to find many things that will be quick solutions to your problems, or you may find about an application that didn't work. The MTI is not only a filter for getting you a point of direction, but it's also a filter and a resource for people to actively find solutions that are similar in nature and that can be copied over to other people in other situations. I think it's as big a tool as we have as what's in between our ears. It's just that at the MTI, we got a lot more people working together, and we all have similar problems.
Todd, any last words?
Oh, I probably not. I think Pete summed it up. MTI is a great organization. Associate members too. We get a lot of good ideas from all the commercial and captive heat treaters.
Well, awesome. Well, hey, Pete, Todd, thank you for being able to carry the load on the first half. Pete, thank you for being persistent. And I've been around you, Pete. I know that you are not going to give up and give in. You conquered the technology today to be here. We appreciate your insights as an owner and the president of MTI. Members, as you're listening, I want you to really think Thursday, March 29th, we're going to have the next edition of Heat Treat Live, and it's going to be covering all the changes going on in A100 and ISO that are coming at the end of this year. We got two great panelists who are going to dig into that stuff because there's some significant penalties if you're not compliant. And we're going to be talking about that in March, on March 29th at 2 p.m. So Pete, Todd, thank you very much. MTI members, thank you for being here. You're not just strong, you're MTI strong, my friends. Y'all have a great day. See you in March.
Thank you.
Thanks.